This is a quick video demonstrating how we can use the joint function in Fusion 360 to assemble all of the components of our trowel together to make a single assembly of our product. It can also be a useful guide for how to use the joint function in Fusion 360. So the first thing we're going to do is, as you can see, I've got my pane up on the left here, and I've got all of the parts open in this that I need. I've got them saved in my Garden Trowel folder, and it's always handy to have your work organized nice and neatly. It might sound quite OCD, but it does make finding the parts you need a lot easier. The first thing we've got to do is save our work. It sounds counterintuitive, but you can't drag in other components to your workspace until you have it saved. If I try now, for example, I get the error saying design not yet saved. So I'm going to save my work first. I'm going to call this trowel assembly and save it there. And you can see now up the top it says trowel assembly version 0. So I'm going to bring in my trowel blade, and when I bring that in, it's going to ask me to position it. If you've designed this with the correct orientation and planes from the start, it will be as you intend it to be in relation to that. If not, you can use these functions here to orientate it, rotate it around to how exactly you want it. I'm going to leave mine as it is because this is the coordinate system that I'm comfortable with and how I designed it. I'm going to press OK, and that's in position, but it can still be moved, and we don't want this to move. We need something fixed in place to stop everything moving around all over the place. So I'm going to go over to the component here, right click and select ground. And now you can see a little pinned icon on the left here, grounding it. This icon next to it is a link icon. If I right click, I can select break link, and that will break the link of this item or object or component to the saved version I have over here. That means that any changes I make to this in this saved file, this assembly, will not affect what happens on here. However, if I want any changes to make here to affect that, I can keep the link active, and therefore it will update that model. So if you're working on something that you want to be constantly adapting or changing, then that could be handy to keep, especially if it's related to the other parts you're bringing in. If this is something that you want as a separate standalone project, you might want to break the link just so that you're not going to affect any other saved files. We're now going to bring in our second item, which is the stem. I'm going to drag this over, just drop it, and no matter where I drop it, it will always bring it in onto the center coordinate system, so the middle of the coordinate system where I place this first one. And you can see this is in a different orientation to how I want it. I could spend time here rotating it and positioning it, but that's not necessary. I'm actually just going to drag it out of the way and press OK, because now I can do my first joint. Now the joint option is in assemble, and that's actually the option here, the quick joint we're going to be using. If you go down to assemble, you can see it there, and the short is J. So if I just type the letter J, this comes up. I can select a component that I've placed in. I cannot select my grounded component. So I'm going to go over to this component here, I'm going to look underneath it, and I'm going to select the middle of one of those holes. And it gives me a node to select. So I could do the edge, I could select any of these edges points over here, and I can snap to a node. I could snap to an area, but I'm going to go to the middle part here. And this node function of snapping to is really handy, especially if you've got any experience using any other forms of CAD software, because this is going to make it a lot easier. In comparison to something like SolidWorks 360, that's a lot more tricky, and you need multiple mates to do something simple. I'm going to go over to this part here, and I'm just going to select this central node on this hole here, and it will align it, but it's rotated incorrectly. However, all I've got to do is drag this dial round to 90 degrees, and it rotates exactly how I want it. And you can see if I move around, is where I want it to be. And if I press OK, it's now fixed in place. I can't physically drag it. If I press the M function for move and I click on that, I can't click to move it because it's locked to this part here, which can't move. So that's my first part in there. And you're going to see that you've got this annoying little feature here. This is just telling you there is a joint here. I can make that icon disappear by selecting the visibility icon on the tree and it disappears. I'm now going to drag in my next component, which is going to be my handle. So I'll drag the handle in and it's there again. So I'm just going to drag it out of the way to there, press OK, and I've got it in place. I can press my joint function, and when I do so, you're going to see all of this disappear because this is connected to, oh sorry, the trowel blade disappears because that's grounded in place. Everything else stays as it is. I'm going to go round and do the exact same motion I did before, the central coordinate node of that hole. So this is effectively an axis that I'm selecting here. And I'm going to do the same thing on this part here. By selecting the outer circle, it actually selects the central node and it knows it's aligning it to the axis of that circle. And that's exactly where I want it. If I want to move it backwards or forwards, if you've got a different sized item, you can. But bear in mind that this doesn't worry about interactions or the actual physics of the product. This is just physically placing something. So be careful with this. So I'm going to keep mine exactly where I placed it and press OK. And that's now in place. And the last thing we need to do is bring our last one in, the end cap, and there it is there. I'll just press OK because I can leave it where it is. I'm going to go to my joint function, and if I spin around, even though it's sitting on top of or in the middle of the product, doesn't matter. I'm going to select in the middle of this surface, and it selected the whole surface. I'm now going to go over to here and select, oh no, it selected that surface. It now wants me to select a node on that surface, and I can select the central node here. If I deselect that and I try and select the central node straight away, because I've got the threaded coil in the middle, I can't select it because it's trying to get me to select one of the coil nodes. So I'll select the surface first, and now I can select that node. And now everything else has come back into visibility because it wants me to select my second node, and I can just select that ring. By selecting that ring, it selects the central node on that surface, which means it's going to align it to both the axis and to that node, and there it goes. And it's in place. Done. And that is fully assembled. This can be used for a number of different options, including section drawings, technical drawings, and renders. So that is how we use the joint function in the basic form to assemble our product together. Okay guys, good luck.